Alright, so before we seam up our purl stitches, it's a good idea to just take a closer look at what a purl stitch actually is. Doing this will help us understand why we need to seam up a purl stitches the way that we do. Alright, so you're looking at a little swatch of knit stitches, right? You've got a bunch of knit stitches and you can tell because of these little V shapes. Knit stitches are made up of what appears to be little V shapes, right? And in the center of this swatch of knit stitches, I've got a row of purl stitches running through it, okay? And you can tell that these are purl stitches because of the little bumps, right? These little bumps right here. So whereas knit stitches look like little V's that lay pretty flat, purl stitches are made up of little bumps that are not so flat, right? They're a bit more 3D, they kind of poke out of the fabric more than knit stitches do. Alright, so if you look a little bit closer at this row of purl stitches, what else can you notice? Well, I'm going to tell you because that was a rhetorical question. Okay, so if you look at this row purl stitches, you can see that not all the bumps are the exact same. You've got some bumps that are on the bottom and some bumps that are at the top, right? Here's a bump on the bottom and here's a bump on the top. A bump on the bottom and a bump on the top. And it kind of alternates in this way, right? You've got a bottom bump, top bump, bottom bump, top bump, right? So keep this in mind because when you're seaming up your purl stitches, you're going to have to figure out which bump is higher, okay? Which bump is higher and which bump is lower. Now, when I have one row of purl stitches isolated in this way, it's a lot easier to pick out, right? But if you have a whole swatch of purl stitches, it'll be a little bit more difficult. So, as an example, I've got a whole swatch of purl stitches right here. So when you're looking at this little swatch, your eyes may, kind of get blurry. You may be seeing stars, but just work with me here, okay? Let's look at this swatch and try and figure out which is the top bump and which is the bottom bump, all right? Try and figure it out. I'll give you like 3 seconds. All right, time's up. Now, if you figured it out, then awesome, good for you, gold star. Tell me in the comment section. But if you didn't figure it out, I'll show you a really quick way that I figure it out. So if you look at this swatch, you can see you've got bumps that are going downwards, right? Like this little bump here is going downwards. This is also going downwards, right? And if you don't want to think of it as downwards, you can think of it as like a rainbow, right? It's going from the bottom, going up, and then down, okay? So it's making kind of this kind of shape. And then you've got bumps that look a little bit like a smiley face, right? Like this guy right here. Here's what I consider to be a little smiley face, right? It starts up top and then it dips down low and goes up again, right? So here's another one. A smiley face, a smiley face, a smiley face, and a rainbow. Rainbow, 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 rainbow. So that's kind of how I figure out what's a top bump and what's a bottom bump. The rainbows are always the top bumps, okay? And the smiley faces are always the bottom bumps, okay? So this would be a top bump and a top bump because these are rainbow shaped. This would be a bottom bump, bottom bump, bottom bump, bottom bump, because this is a smiley face shape, okay? So look at this fabric again and try and identify the top bumps, the rainbow bumps, and the bottom bumps, the smiley face bumps. I'll bet you have an easier time doing it now that you have this whole rainbow smiley face thing in your head. Alright, so now I've got 2 pieces of knitted fabric made up entirely of purl stitches, and I'm going to seam these 2 pieces together. So I've got my needle all threaded up and ready to go. And what we're going to do is we're going to connect the bottom bump of one piece of our fabric to the top bump of the other piece of fabric. All right, so let's do this. I'm going to take my needle and I'm just going to go in from the back to the front of this piece of fabric at the bottom of this corner. Okay, so I just want to connect these 2 pieces of fabric first. Here we go. All right, so now my 2 pieces of fabric are connected and now we can think about bottom bumps and top bumps. Okay, so I'm gonna work on my left side of my fabric first, and I'm going to find the bottom bump of this row. So I can see that I've got a smiley face here, cool, and a rainbow up here, and here is a smiley face, right? And I'm gonna go into the smiley face from the bottom to the top, okay? Here we go. Just pull that through, cool. So now I'm gonna go on this side of my fabric and I'm gonna find a rainbow, right? So a top bump. So here, this looks like a rainbow to me, right? This is a smiley face, rainbow, and that looks like a rainbow, okay? And it's close to the edge of my fabric, which is great. So I'm gonna go into this rainbow right here and pull my yarn through. Okay, great. Now I'm gonna go to the left side of my fabric again, and I'm going to look for a smiley face. So here we go. Here's a smiley face right here, right? Here's a rainbow, rainbow, smiley face, and this is right on the edge of my fabric, which is great. So I'm gonna pull that through. Now I'm gonna go to my right side, my right piece of fabric, and I'm gonna look for a rainbow. So here is a smiley face, and here is a rainbow, right? So I'm gonna go into that rainbow. So basically, if you notice a pattern here, it's that one side of my fabric will always be a smiley face, and the other side of my fabric will always be a rainbow side. Okay, so you can assign these early on before you start seaming, or you can just remember it as you go along. I've decided this side is going to be my smiley face, so the bottom bump, and this side of my fabric is going to be my rainbow, so the top bump. If I keep that in mind, then it'll make my seaming process a lot easier, right? So my left side is always going to be my smiley face side, right? The bottom bump. So my right side is always going to be my rainbow, so my top bump. So you can always just repeat this to yourself, right? Left side smiley face, right side rainbow, right? Whatever helps you remember. Let's do a couple more of these together. So my right side is my rainbow, so here's my rainbow, right? And let's pull that through. Left side is my smiley face, so here's a smiley face, here's a smiley face, so we're going to go into that smiley face, okay? And my right side is my rainbow side, so here's a smiley face and here's a rainbow, okay? All right, so let's take a look at our seam so far. So our seam is looking pretty good. If I just cover up this part, which we haven't seamed up yet, you can see that it's looking pretty invisible, right? It just looks like a continuation of one piece of fabric. The seam isn't that visible. Now it's looking a little bit tight now, so I can always just pull it a little bit, loosen it up, and it looks great. So this is how you seam up two pieces of purl stitch fabric, by connecting a bottom bump, right? So a smiley face with a top bump, a rainbow. We're just continuing the way that purl stitches naturally run into each other, right? So just continue doing this till you reach the top part of your fabric, and then you will have seamed up your entire two pieces. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, then please subscribe to this channel where new knitting goodness gets added all the time. And of course, check out sheepandstitch.com where new patterns, news, and giveaways happen with some frequency. All right, that's it for me. I'm Davina of sheepandstitch.com. Have a great day and happy knitting!